You smell the fertilizer? Is it all you want for Christmas? It's a bag of organic fertilizer? Yeah, I think so. Welcome to HortTube. My name is Jim Putnam. In this video, I'm going to be putting out organic fertilizer on all of my bed spaces in my yard. I do this every year in the late winter or early spring. I'm probably a week or two ahead of where I would probably do it if I wasn't making YouTube videos and showing you so that you could do the same thing in your yard. But it doesn't matter with organic fertilizer. I'm not going to be pushing the plants too early, because the way organic fertilizers work is they actually feed the soil microbes, and the microbes make nutrients available for your plants. It's been so cold, those microbes aren't actually active, and so I'm not jumping the gun at all. The fertilizer will just sit here. Another reason I use organic fertilizers is just a small amount of nitrogen and phosphorus and potassium and some micronutrients. It's not, I'm not trying to overdo, I'm not trying to push my plants. I'm just trying to make sure that they have the things that they need in place in small amounts. Again, not trying to push the plants at all. I only do this once a year. I do it at much lower rate than the companies probably say on the bag. I just give the ground a light dusting. I'm using Plant Tone this time from Espoma. I've always liked the Espoma products. Don't have any affiliation with them whatsoever. You know, if there was another organic fertilizer that I liked as much as this, I would have bought it. That's not a thing at all. One thing I want to address in this video before I get started, I've got a bag of Epsom salts right here. The only thing you'll ever see me tell you to put down on your yard is a basic fertilizer once a year. And I'm talking about bed spaces, your shrubs and trees and perennials and annual beds. We're not talking about turf here. The only thing I'd ever tell you to put out on that is just basically a replacement set of nutrients for things that your shrubs might have used the previous year. So very basic, general organic fertilizer like this. I would never tell you to put down Epsom salts or gypsum or any other nutrient or mineral that would change your soil composition without first telling you to get a soil test. Any video you see, any blog post you see, anything you Google that comes up and says that Epsom salts are great for your garden, or use gypsum if you have clay soils, or anything else that's generic information that does not say, based on a soil test, this may work for this, is just flat out bad information. It's somebody that doesn't know what they're talking about. There's an Epsom salt video I've seen that has 186,000 views of all the great benefits of using Epsom salts on 1,000 different ways in your yard. This is magnesium sulfate, and it's very possible that your yard is low in magnesium, and this would be a helpful thing for you. But there's also the possibility, without knowing that you're overdoing something and you're locking up another nutrient. You would think, well, what would be wrong with having too much of one thing? These nutrients and minerals are different sizes, okay, and they play roles beyond just feeding your plants. Calcium and magnesium work together in the soil. The calcium molecules are much larger than the magnesium molecules. If you have a ratio of magnesium to calcium that's it's like 1 to 1, you can have very compact soils. If you have a calcium to magnesium ratio, it's more like 7 parts calcium and 1 part magnesium, which is what I would like to have in my soil, and mine's actually pretty close to that. It's 5 to 1. Then the soil's much looser, so there's consequences, okay, to using minerals. Gypsum is a great example of this. Gypsum, everybody recommends to break up clay soils. It absolutely positively does. The problem is when you create a porous soil of any kind, you then can leach nutrients, okay? So gypsum is used in large commercial farming a lot of times as a last resort, really. Farmers really don't want to do this. They will apply gypsum to a field that has become salty over time, so sodic soils. And what they're doing is they're trying to make sure that they're trying to get that salt to leach out of the soil. So nutrients leach out of the soil after you use gypsum. So if you were in a high desert yard and you only got 7, 8, 9 inches of rain in a year, and you had clay soils, if you use gypsum, probably it's okay because the rain's not going to wash all your other nutrients out of the soil. if you're in an area that gets 60, 70 inches of rain a year, like we could get in the southeast, 50, in my area, and you used a lot of gypsum in your yard, you have the potential to lose nutrients. Wear gloves. There's organic fertilizers and old gloves. These are just some old, work gloves that I keep just for doing this organic fertilizer. It smells very pungent, and I've shown this 3 years in a row. I take a small handful and I just spread it out right under every plant. Holly loves this stuff, and so I'm going to put her away right now and then show you some various areas in the yard where I'm putting out the fertilizer. So I'm just generally covering the entire space with just a light dusting. It's supposed to rain this afternoon. This is a very smelly product, so I'm hoping by doing this a few hours before the rain, I can get the smell to die down. Again, your dog's going to love this smell and want to spend days rolling in it and playing in it. So if you can find a day where it's going to rain in a few hours after you put this out, that's probably ideal. Some people won't always ask me the question, should you pull the mulch back and fertilize underneath? I don't like to do that. Obviously, it's more effective to have the fertilizer down in contact with the soil under your mulch, but when I pull the mulch barrier back, part of my mulch barrier is that the mulch is kind of formed a crust on the top that is working for weed prevention, and if I break that crust, pull my mulch back to fertilize these plants individually, when I put that mulch back, I've definitely brought weed seeds to the top, and I'm just going to have whole new weed crop out here. I've done no weed control out here this entire winter, and I can see a few weeds back here, but there's almost nothing, and it's because I've got this mulch barrier, and I just don't allow that crust to be broken on it. So I'm about to plant my late winter, early spring, cool season vegetables in here. That's broccoli and leafy greens and beets and several other things. And I'm going to go ahead and throw the fertilizer out here as well. I'm using Plant Tone. They make Garden Tone if you want to buy a different one, but not enough of a difference for me. Again, all I'm trying to do here is replace nutrients that would have been used by the last crop that was here. And this is a well-balanced fertilizer. So I'm just going to put a light coating over the top. I'll bring this a little closer because you'll be able to see it on this compost layer that's on the top about how much I'm using. One other point here is if you planned to do no additional landscaping in your yard that year, you can just go right to the individual plants and fertilize those a little more directly. I wouldn't pile it right at the bottom. Still go around the drip line, under the drip line of the plant, so all the roots, you're feeding the roots, keep in mind. You're not feeding this top part that you can see, you're feeding the roots. So still cover a pretty broad area, but you don't necessarily have to cover the entire ground. I've got in very extensive planting plans for this season, so I'm fertilizing the entire space. So I think you can see right there how that's scattered, on the ground. That's about how it looks every time I use this material. If I go over here to where I haven't thrown it out, right there, you can see that's just a black compost, and then coming back over here, you can see this dusting of fertilizer that's on there. So again, definitely wear gloves, and if you can get a day where it's going to rain the next day or that night or something, that's pretty ideal to knock this smell down pretty quickly. I've got long sleeve shirt on. I'm definitely heading toward the shower. That's a 36-pound bag of fertilizer. I'm guessing I have somewhere, and I just see a spot on the other side of the driveway that I forgot to get where my blueberries are over there, but I've got a few handfuls left. I'm guessing I probably have about 5,000 square feet of actual bed space, maybe a little less than that, and I used that 36-pound bag on that, so that'll give you some rough estimate of how much coverage I got out of that bag. I ordered that from Amazon. Plant Tones at most of the garden centers that you would go in, maybe even some of the box stores as well. You can use Holly Tone if you need to adjust your pH down some. It's got some sulfur in it that will help lower your pH. That's definitely temporary, and again, based on a soil test. So if you do a pH test and you find that your pH is 7 or higher, you may want to use Holly Tone instead of Plant Tone. If you do a soil test or a pH test and your pH is 5.5, and all these plants I have out here are acid-loving plants, I don't need to adjust it down. Just because I have an acid-loving plant doesn't mean I need to use a fertilizer for acid-loving plants if my soil pH is already right. I hope that makes some sense. You don't need to be adjusting your soil pH for no reason. I mean, you know, these plants, I've got the perfect pH for the plants that are in my yard currently, so I don't need to be adjusting that. But again, I'm going to say, you can use Hollytone. Do a pH test first. If your pH is over 7, use Hollytone. If it's not, use Plant Tone or whatever equivalent organic fertilizers are available in your area. Thank you very much for watching this video. Again, I never really have any negativity on this channel, but I do see other people recommending things, and their recommendations aren't necessarily wrong. I'm not saying people's recommendations are wrong. I'm saying they may be wrong for you, okay? They may be right for them, but wrong for you. And so just keep that in mind. Get a soil test. Definitely get your pH tested. pH is probably the most important component to all of this. And I have a video on my channel called Why is pH So Important, or something like that, that you may want to go back and watch and have a better understanding of why. Thanks for watching.